Dr. Caglar Ozden, thanks for joining us here on CGTN, here on site of the venue for the Global Labor Market Conference 2023. But let's start with challenges. Like, what are some of the challenges today's global labor market are facing? And if we look at here in Saudi Arabia, in the Middle East, are there any differences compared to the US, the EU, or even China?
Okay. Well, let's take a global perspective. So there are two big interrelated challenges. So the first one is actually related to demographics, right? Basically the age ratio across the world. Now, if you look at the world as a whole, we are actually pretty balanced. What we call, economists call the dependency ratio, is pretty stable for the next 30, 40 years. So that's great news. But what it is, we have the aging in high-income countries and increasing youth number in the low-income countries. And the challenge, we all know this, you know it, I know it, but the real challenge actually lies with the middle and upper middle income countries, where China belongs. So the number of the eligible young population who's going to enter the labor market in the next 20, 30 years is actually declining much more rapidly. So we're running out of young workers, actually, believe it or not, around the world. Now the challenge is, so we have the workers, we need workers in high income countries, we're going to need workers in upper middle income countries, and we have the young workers. But the second challenge is the education gap. As a staff member of the World Bank, my biggest concern is how do I make sure that everybody in the world, including my own children, gets the education they need, and then they can find the jobs that their skills match. That's the big challenge. Now the challenge for Saudi Arabia, I'm no expert by any means, is basically twofold. Now, number one is making the transition from a natural resource-based economy to a more diversified economy, especially in terms of technology. They're fully aware of it. But the other challenge is this transition requires many more skills. And Saudi Arabia, like all the other countries on the planet, will be competing for the same skills. And how successful will they be in attracting these skilled people from all over the world into Saudi Arabia, because they're going to be not only competing with Kuwait or UAE, but they're going to be competing with US and Australia and China and Japan, and now let's say Turkey or Tunisia, all of these countries. How do you compete?
And what I've seen is that a lot of Saudi nationals are also opting to study in China. So what's your take on that? So for China's labor market, how it actually played a role in global economy, and this friendship between China and Saudi Arabia, how can it help Saudi Arabia's labor demand?
So, I mean, the one thing we have to keep in mind, the relative population size of two countries, right? It's a different order of magnitude. And the needs of the two countries are very different, and the orientations of the two countries are different. And when you look at the relationship between any two countries, this is not just specific to China-Saudi Arabia relationship, but China's relationship with any other country or Saudi Arabia's relationship with any other country, right? It has multiple channels of relationship, multiple bonds. So the labor market channel is only one of them. There is the trade channel, there is the FDI channel, there is the tourist channel, there is the political channel, you name it. So the other complementarity you will see that will strengthen the labor market channels is how the other bonds develop over time.
China has been reforming its economic structures from a more labor-intensive manufacturing base. Today, the government has been calling high-quality development to really upscale its technological capabilities. How does that shift somewhat play a factor into global labor market?
Absolutely, huge impacts. China is a big player, right? So anything that happens in China impacts the global labor markets. So now the demographic transition in China, what we are observing over the last 30, 40 years, not only has profound implications for China, but for everybody else. Now, Chinese integration into the global economy has been phenomenal, right? It's been extremely successful in so many dimensions, but the change in the structure, the age distribution, and the skill distribution of the labor market is critical, right? So there are two dimensions to it. One is when you're shifting from let's say a manufacturing low skill based economy to a higher skilled manufacturing or higher skilled services economy, two things happen. Wages increase,
Yes.
which is great for productivity because they are correlated, right? increasing wages is somebody's income. So the prosperity increases. This is the ultimate goal of any government, the prosperity of its citizens increasing. But at the same time, people think, oh, it's going to reduce our competitiveness in the global labor market. But that's not the right way to look at it. What matters is the labor cost per unit of input and output. Right? If the productivity is increasing, and that productivity increases because of the human capital that is increasing, that's fantastic. So then that becomes, in a sense, killing multiple birds with one stone. That's the objective, and that's, I am sure, the objective of the Chinese government. Not to just increase the wages because of labor shortages, but increase the wages because the underlying human capital level and the productivity of the workers are increasing. And that's what you want to achieve as a policymaker.